If you've transitioned to learning jazz from another genre, then you may find some of the chord shapes a bit of a challenge, as the shapes jazz guitarists often use are just simply reduced versions of more traditional chord shapes, and as a result they often involve muting unused strings. Fail to mute those unused strings and you'll end up with some odd sounding chords, and you might get some nasty clashes, and the trouble with open strings, they vibrate more than fretted notes, and as a result they can really just muddy the sound of your chord and ruin the sound of your rhythm guitar playing. I've got 4 rules for you which can help you get through this, help you get this muting as your natural way of playing jazz rhythm guitar. When it comes to playing swing rhythm guitar, you know, we want to be able to free our mind up for more important things than how many strings we're playing in the right hand, which means we need to mute from this hand. And when I'm playing swing rhythm guitar, so if I was playing like a rhythm changes, you know, the priority of this hand is to keep the swing feel going, keep the timing going, and I'm not worrying about how many strings I'm hitting. Most of the time I'm hitting most of the strings, like, and it's this hand which is sorting out those open strings. From day one of learning guitar, say from learning chords like C, one key thing we've got to be able to do is, you know, bend your knuckle there, keep the fingers really upright so that they don't catch the string either side. Say like that, we want a perfect 5 notes ringing out, and that's the way we train our fingers to work. Later on we do things like bar chords, where one finger's playing more than one note, and then probably after that you might go into the fact that, oh, do you know what, with that C, I could rest my thumb, you know, against the low E string to kill it, so that if I happen to hit it, it's not going to be a problem. Or I could let the 3rd finger here on the A string rest against it so that it kills it. And you might have those things already, but the kind of 3-note chord voicings we're using require a bit more. You know, quite often we're muting 50% of the strings. You know, with that C chord, it's just one string we've got to mute, so it's not such a big deal. Now, key thing here, if you practice these things slowly and deliberately, they can become part of your unconscious sort of guitar playing. Like if you think of a C, you can probably just go to it there without any thought. But can you go to a C and mute the E string at the same time without having to think about it? It has to become just unthought action, so things have to be done very slowly. You need to be patient with yourself with this. Rule 1, play on the pad of the index finger. The index finger is going to be your chief muting tool. This is going to be the finger which does the most of the muting. You will simultaneously play notes and mute notes with this finger. Take an ordinary chord like D, say, fingers are nice and upright, you're playing on the tip of the finger. What we're going to do is we're going to play on the pad of the finger, so this part of the finger, like when you do a bar chord, but we're not necessarily going to use all of it. Let's look at an example chord. Here's this G7 on the screen. If you look there, we've got 3 notes and we've got 3 strings with X's over them that we want to mute. Now if I took this sort of traditional approach of playing sort of chords on guitar like C and D, knuckle bent there, look at that first 5th knuckle there bent in the finger so that the finger stays upright so that the high E can come out. So we're going to want to do the opposite of that. What we're going to do, instead of being upright, because if I try to do the chord upright, this is what's going to happen, look there. Now the A string and the B and the E can ring out, so we get 6 notes when we only want 3. So what we're going to do to achieve the muting is we're going to collapse the 1st finger. Instead of using the tip to play the note on the E string, we're going to use the pad. Now what's also going to happen, we're playing on the pad because we want to catch the A string. Now you can't simply bar, you can't do this, because if you do that, then the A string note will play on fret 3 like that, and we're going to get notes we don't want again. So what it has to do, it's quite tricky, is you play on the pad and then the finger goes kind of slightly raises up over the A string and just rests against it to catch it. That's the sound you want to hear on the A string. So you've got a note clearly ringing out on the E string, A string muted, notes on the D and G ringing out, and the bottom 2 strings should be muted by this 1st finger. Look how it's coming in from the underside of the neck here. Now I'm not applying pressure to these strings in terms of pushing down, but my finger is resting against them. It's kind of like a, look at the way the finger arcs across the guitar. It's not a bar, not like a bar, we're not doing that. It's only applying pressure to the 1 string, and it's resting, it's kind of arcing over, curving over. Now the other cool thing about having your index finger on the pad, say if I do it at fret 1, is it gives you a greater reach, so you can stretch further. Whereas if I had the finger upright, look, this is as far as I can reach. Whereas when I play, say, fret 1 on the low E, look, I can get my finger to fret 5. Whereas when it's upright, I can get it to fret 4 only just. So that's the other cool thing about this. It can facilitate a better stretch. For certain chords you need this. Rule 2, if the index can't mute those strings, then slant other fingers in the chord to catch the other strings. So here's a chord for us to look at this. So in this example, we've got a D-7, which is 3 strings, 3 notes, 3 to mute. Now, you'll notice my index finger is on the pad. Again, it's not upright like this. It's on the pad. And then it's not barred again. It's just arcing over, resting against these strings underneath. And then I've got my other 2 fingers here on the G and the B string. Now, let's say, for example, I couldn't get my first finger to catch this E at the bottom for whatever reason, then it was like this, like that, and it'd be like, oh, that's annoying. What you can do, if you've got a finger next to a string, instead of having it upright, just sort of slant it down a bit. It's like I've just done there. Instead of being like that, slant it down a bit so that it just rests against that string, catches it. Rule 3, concentrate on the most problematic strings, the strings which vibrate the most, the thickest strings, the low E and the A string. So this rule is really important. The E and the A string, if you accidentally catch them, they just make so much unwanted noise. And you've got to take care of them, you've got to sort those out. So let's take the chord we just used, that D-7, because that's on a root A chord. And we want to make sure if we play any root A chord that this low E string doesn't ring out. So how are we going to stop that string from ringing out? Because if it does and I play this chord and that E rings out, it's going to sound horrendous. Like that, it's really going to muddy things. So what you're going to do, that index finger is going to work some more. So we've got the index finger on the pad. The pad of the finger is playing the note on the A string, and then the tip of the finger is resting against the E string to stop it from ringing out. So your tip of your finger rests against the string. Now the key with this, to get this, is to really feel what that feels like. So you want to be able to put the chord down and you can just feel the string resting against the tip of your finger. That's how you're going to do it in the long run. You're going to use your senses to help you do this habitually. Now let's say we're doing a chord that doesn't have the index finger on the A string. Let's say we're doing this D7 like this. Now I could bring my thumb maybe over the top, Hendrix style, to mute it like that. That would work too, but not everyone can do that, and I would say probably the most common way to do it would be let the middle finger in this instance rest against the E. So it is playing on the tip kind of here. It's kind of not as upright, say, as it might be for more traditional guitar chords. It's slightly slanted so that the edge of the finger can rest against the low E. You have 3 strings, notes that want to come out. Slant this finger here to catch the B. I get a bit of a harmonic there, great. And then the index finger coming in here will catch the high E. Let's say we're doing a chord on the root on the D string, like this. G major 7, sorry. So again, tip of the index finger's on the pad, and the tip of the finger's gonna rest against the A string to stop it ring. This is difficult to mute the E string, I'd have to be careful here. Rule 4, double up, have an insurance policy. Here's an example where, so what is an insurance policy with muting? Well, it is you apply 2 methods just to double up, just in case one doesn't work. Because it can happen, you miss one slightly, because we're talking about millimeters quite often here. Now, if we take this C sharp diminished chord, it's a 4-note chord. So we don't want the E string, either E string coming out. So what we're going to do, first finger again coming in, playing the note pretty much on the pad, catching the high E at the bottom. Middle finger, sort of not as upright as normal, it's not like that, it's slightly slanted and it's resting against the E string. Then the insurance policy would be the thumb resting over the top, just in case I didn't catch that E string. Now, those are my 4 rules. Now, one thing you might have been thinking through all of this, what about right hand muting? Why can't we just do it with the right hand? I think right hand muting works better in other genres on the guitar. For rock and blues, it works really well. You might just rest your hand there when you're soloing against the low E and the A and maybe even the D. So those strings aren't going to vibrate or sound if you accidentally knock against them. I think for jazz, it just runs the risk of ending up with palm muted chords, which we're not going to want too often. And also when people mute like that in other styles of guitar, they rest their hand really closely to the bridge, whereas, you know, it's quite typical for jazz guitar players to pick a bit closer to the neck, because, you know, if I pick down by the bridge it can sound quite shrill, but if I pick close to the neck it's more mellow. And if you actually try and mute here, when you accidentally play a note that you've muted, it just didn't get anything, whereas further back you get it, but it's thinner. I said earlier, slow, deliberate practice. You need to be patient with yourself with this. This is something technical. It's asking your fingers to do different things, sometimes multiple different things, some upright, some flat. Some, you know, you might have the first finger where it's playing one string and it's muting 2 other strings. It's a lot of multitasking, so slow, deliberate practice. Be patient with yourself. Take things really slowly. If you still struggle with this, if this goes on for a long time and these tips I'm showing aren't working for you for whatever reason, because everyone is different physiologically, you know, you may have injured your hand or broken fingers at certain points, or have difficulties with certain shapes and the muting just becomes problematic, then there's always the option to play with your fingers, which eliminates the need to mute. That said, I think quite often people that play fingerstyle still mute in case they happen to hit the wrong string, but if you're accurate with this hand, it shouldn't be a problem. I really hope you find these tips helpful for your left hand muting to clear up the sound of your rhythm guitar playing. If you've got any tips you think I might have missed off, then please leave them below for others to get to. If you've got any questions, then please leave them for me and I'll do my best to get back to you. Don't forget jazz guitar lessons every Wednesday and Saturday. Finally, there's a few links in the description. There's a link to my Buy Me a Coffee if you want to say thank you for today or for any other lessons. There's also a link to the Jazz Guitar with Andy Facebook group. Lastly, I'll put a couple of videos up on the screen if you want to check out some other videos for myself. Anyway, until next time, you take care.